Math with Mr. Williams. Example 1. Using order of operations. Evaluate. So the first one we have 12 minus 2 times 4. So we're going to focus on using Pemdas. So our first step is to do with any parentheses. Well, there is no parentheses. Exponents? None. But we do have multiplication and division. Now remember, this is an order from left to right. And so is addition and subtraction. Okay, so the first step here would be 2 times 4, which gets us 8. We bring down the 12 minus. So we have 12 minus 8 will get us 4 for our first answer. On the second one, we have 60 divided by bracket, parentheses 4 plus 2 in parentheses times 5 in bracket. Okay, so we're going to start with the parentheses. So we have 4 plus 2 is 6. All right, and now we're going to do 6 times 5, since that's inside the bracket, giving us 30. And now 60 divided by 30 will get us 2 for our answer. Math with Mr. Williams. Example 2. Using order of operations with exponents. Evaluate. So here we have 30 divided by parentheses 7 plus 2 with an exponent of 3 in parentheses times 6. So the first thing we need to do is work on our grouping symbols. Well, within that we have 7 plus 2 to the third power. So then we have to go to our exponents part next. So we're going to take this 2 to the third power. We're going to break him up. So we're going to bring everything else down, but then we're going to take that 2 to the third power and break them into 3 of those 2's. So in this case, we have 3 of those 2's being multiplied together. So here we have 2 times 2 times 2 in the first set of parentheses, and that'll give us 8. So in this next part, we're going to go back to the grouping symbols, and we're going to add 7 plus 8 because we still have parentheses. 7 plus 8 will give us 15. All right, and so now we go on to the third step, which is to multiply and divide from left to right. 30 divided by 15, because we go in order from left to right. So 30 divided by 15 will give us 2. And then our last step is 2 times 6. This will give us our final answer of 12. Math for Mr. Williams, example 3, adding integers with the same sign. So here we have find -4 plus a -2. We know when they have the same sign, we just add them up. So we take -4, and we're going to add a -2 to it. And if you think of it as more like a game of baseball, we have the Cards, we have the Cubs. In this case, the Cubs are going to pull this one off because they scored 4, and they also scored 2. So if we think of them Cubs as negative and the Cardinals are the positive numbers, we can clearly see, well, if we add both those up, we're going to get a -6 for their score. So our answer in this case is a -6. Math with Mr. Williams, example 4, adding integers with different signs. Okay, so our first one we have 5 plus a -10. And so we know when we're dealing with this, we're basically asking ourselves, what do we have more of? So in this case, if we're playing the Cards and the Cubs still, Cards being the positive and the Cubs being the negative numbers. So we have the Cards scored 5 and the Cubs scored 10. So what do we have more of? Who won this game? Well, the Cubs won. So we subtract the two numbers. So 10 minus 5 would be 5. And there are more negative numbers, so it makes it a -5. All right, so the next one we have a -3 and a +7. Well, if we put the 7 on the positive side and the -3 over on the negative side, well, we can see clearly the positive side won that inning. So 7 minus 3 will give us 4, and we know we have more positive numbers, so it's a +4. All right, and the last one though, we have a -12, so I'm going to put that in the Cub category. But we have a +12 for the Cardinals here. So what do we have more of? We don't have more than anything. We have the same exact number. So 12 minus 12 will give us 0. And 0 is neither positive nor negative. Math with Mr. Williams, example 5, adding rational numbers. So here we have find negative 8 over 3 plus 5 over 6. Now I know we're adding fractions here, and I know the first step is to get a common denominator. All right, so let's go ahead and rewrite. So we have negative 8 over 3 plus 5 over 6. And our common number between a 3 and 6 is going to be a 6. Okay, so the trick to get from the 3 to the 6 is going to be this multiplier. And when we use the multiplier, we have to be fair. So we have to multiply the top and bottom by that same number. So we're going to multiply the top and bottom by a 2 so I can make that 3 into a 6. And when I do that, 2 times the 8 up top is going to give me that negative 16. So on the right side, technically we're multiplying the top and bottom by 1, which still gives me a 5. Now when we add fractions, we know the common denominator that we did all that work for is going to stay the same. But now we just add the top numbers. So this takes us back to the Cards versus Cubs again. And we ask ourselves, who's winning between the 16 and the 5? Because one's negative and one's positive. Of course, the negatives are winning. And 16 minus the 5 will get us 11. Now we need to simplify because we can't have an improper fraction. 6 will go into 11, a grand total of 1 time. So we bring that negative up front. And 11 minus 6 will give us the new top number of 5 over 6. So my answer in this case will be a negative 1 and 5, 6. Math with Mr. Williams, example 6, subtracting integers. Find 3 minus 12. Then we have negative 8 minus a negative 13. And we have 5 minus a negative 4. Okay, so in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to apply this adding the opposite rule. So instead of having 3 minus 12, we're going to rewrite this as 3 plus, now the opposite of a positive 12 is a negative 12. Now this takes us back to the game of baseball. So the question is, who's winning? And we have the Cards and Cubs. So we have the Cardinals are always the positive, Cubs are always the negative here. So we have 3 for the Cards and the negative 12 for the Cubs. Now who won between that game? Well, guess what? The Cubs won. They won, so we ask, by how much? So we subtract the 2. 12 minus 3 will get us 9. And because the 12 is bigger than that 3, it's a negative 9. All right, so let's go to the next one. So we have negative 8, and then we're going to apply the adding the opposite here. So we have negative 8 plus, in this case, this changes to a positive 13. All right, so let's go ahead and put that into our table here. So we have a negative 8 on the Cubs side. We have a positive 13. Now I can clearly see that 13 is definitely bigger than that 8. So I'm going to subtract the 2, 13 minus 8, and that's going to get me 5. Now, who won? Well, the Cards won, so my answer is positive because I have more positive numbers than negative. All right, lastly, we have 5 minus a negative 4. So we have 5. Adding the opposite would be plus a positive 4. If I put these both down, I can see that it would be 5 and then another 4. There's nothing on the Cubs side. So we just add these two up. So 5 plus 4 would get me 9, and they're both positive. So a positive 9 for my last answer. Math with Mr. Williams, example 7, subtracting rational numbers. So here we have more fraction work. We have a negative 4 and 1/7 minus 5/7. So I'm going to go ahead and rewrite this to start off with. And we're going to use our adding the opposite rule here. So we're going to add, and now the 5 over 7 will change to a negative 5 over 7. This step, we're just going to add the two fractions up because they're both negative in this case. So we have 1 plus a negative 5. We're going to say negative 6 over 7. Bring my whole number across. Clean it up a little bit. So we have negative 4 and 6 over 7. Now, it may not be that easy. Okay, let's stress that. So what we're going to do is I'm going to show you around the world real quick, just in case you have to deal with opposites. Okay, so down here we have -4 and 1/7 plus a -5 over 7. And around the world basically says this: I take my whole number out front, I multiply it to my denominator, and then I add my numerator to that number. So 4 times 7 is 28. 28 plus 1 is where 29 comes from. Keep it negative. On top of that, 7. And then I bring down the rest. And again, I can see that I'm just going to add up those negatives on top, keeping my fraction rule of keeping the common denominator when I'm adding. 29 plus 5 will get me a -34. And now, since it is an improper, I can go ahead and I can simplify. 7 will go into 34 a total of 4 times. So my whole number will be 4. 4 times 7 is 28. So then 34 minus 28 will get us 6. So my top number will be 6, and my bottom number stays the 7. So both ways work. Just understand, sometimes you can just add straight across, and other times you're going to have to do the around the world. You may have to borrow in some cases, but the result will be the same.